This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good Erev Shabbos, Rabbi. As we prepare for Selichos, Matzoi Shabbos, B'moitzai Minucha Gidamnucha Tchila. Okay, so we know we begin to say Selichos, Matzoi Shabbos. One interesting thing, an interesting phenomenon about Selichos is that the Kaddish following Selichos is somewhat of an anomaly. It is the only time that we'll ever say Kaddish and say the words Tiskabel Tzelois Hain, which does not follow Shemana Esrei. Every single time we say Kaddish Tiskabel, it's either Shachris at the end of Uvel Tzion, it's going back on Shemana Esrei. Mincha at the end of Shemana Esrei. Mariv at the end of Shemana Esrei. We will never ever say Tiskabel Tzelois Hain unless we daven Shemana Esrei, with the exception of Selichos. Why? The Levush really opens up for us the structure of Selichos. To appreciate and understand, we know it begins with Ashrei, followed by Kaddish Yasaim, followed by Psukim of Shvach v'Haida, of Hishtachava, of Bayu Lefanav, and followed by Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim, followed by Tachnun, followed by V'anachnu Neda, followed by Kaddish Tiskabel. What is the structure of Selichos? Well, it says the Levush, Mordechai Yafa, V'anachnu Neda, Kaddish Shalem im Tiskabel, Af agav shebechol yimos Hashanah ino imrim Tiskabel ela achar tefillah Shemana Esrei. Even though the rest of the year we don't say Tiskabel, only after Shemana Esrei. Shekein hu mashmois lashain tzelois hain. That is the mashmois of the word tzelois hain. What is tzelois hain? Right? Tzelois hain is a tefillah. Shepirshu tefillah. Ustam tefillah, ratzalem tefillah Shemana Esrei. So why do we say Kaddish Tiskabel after Selichos? Shani seder ha-Selichos, sheniskenu kula mal seder ha-tefillah shekol hayom. Basically, Selichos are what?
Like a review, a summary of all the tefillah for the
Selichos are paralleled after a tefillah. Ki ha-psukim shekoidem ha-Selichos, the psukim before Selichos, hem keneged psukim de Zimra. V'haslichos im ha'yud gimel midos sha'omrim ben kol achas v'achas hem b'makom tfilas yudches. The slichos with the yud gimel midos that we say between each one are instead of Shemana Esrei. So the psukim are psukim de Zimra, and the slichos are keneged yud gimel. The slichos yud gimel midos are keneged Shemana Esrei. Why? She'ikar ha'tfilah hu yud gimel midos. The Iker Slichos al Yud Gimel Midos. By the way, we once pointed out that even the tefillah itself that we have is structured around Yud Gimel Midos Rachamim, almost the opposite. In other words, here we're learning Yud Gimel Midos Rachamim is connected to Shemana Esrei. Actually, in Psukei de Zimra has 13 parts to it, and Bach Sha'amar has 13 parts to it, and Yishtabach has 13 parts to it, and there are actually 13 middle brachos of the Shemana Esrei. V'yachar kach noiflim al pneihem. Then you say tachnun k'mayachar kol atfilos. U'mesaymin v'anachnu lo neda lekach oimrim achareim kaddish shalem. Therefore we say afterwards kaddish shalem im tiskabel k'mayachar gemar kol tfilos Hashanah, like after the completion of all the tfilos of the year. So basically what Levush is saying is that Selichos is patterned after tefillah. And therefore it begins with Psukei de Zimra, which is the Psukim before Yud Gimel Midos. Then the Selichos and Yud Gimel Midos are Shemana Esrei, followed by Tachnun, followed by Kaddish Tiskabel. Therefore, let's discuss the following case. I am told that in some communities there may be one or two people that don't come on time to Selichos. Not that I ever saw such a thing, but I'm told that there are people who are not there early for Selichos. And the question is, let's say a person would come late, and they come in and the tzibur is in the middle of saying Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim or a Slicha. Should they start with Ashrei and then catch up, or could Ashrei go by the wayside? Well, in past years, we've always said, and we said it pretty emphatically, and I think we're going to be chayzer this year. In past years, we've said that one who comes late must say Ashrei. Why? Because we just saw from the Levush that Ashrei is an integral part of Selichos. Ashrei is, so to speak, seemingly, the psuke de zimra of the Selichos. And the same way if someone comes late to davening, they can skip Baruch She'amar Ashrei and Yishtabach, right? You have to say a bare minimum psuke de zimra. Likewise, if someone comes late to Selichos, they would not be allowed to skip Ashrei. In fact, in the Sefer Likutei Maharich, he brings down, based on this Levush, that Ashrei of Selichos is the psuke de zimra of Selichos. Look in the number 2. V'nei seder as-Selichos, ayin b'minhagim u'levush, that it begins with Ashrei, v'hatam k'dei sheyomer achar kach Kaddish. The reason is so that you could say Kaddish afterwards. V'yomer achar kach psuke l'cha Hashem atzdaka v'shomei atfila v'imloi hayasar b'shazmiros Ashrei uvo achar kach. You say Kaddish even in the middle of the psukim, as long as you said 3 psukim before the Kaddish. Why do we say Kaddish before Selichos? We know why we say Kaddish after. Why do we say Kaddish before? Same reason.
Kaddish like Yishtabach.
It's like, or like, maybe before Pesukei de Zimra, or maybe before Shemona Esrei Mincha, or before Marav. V'hatam shekbidu lemer Kaddish koydem as-Selichos, efshar pi ma shekasa levush, da Selichos niskenu al seder tfilas kol hayom, sha'psukim shekoydem as-Selichos are keneged Pesukei de Zimra, and maybe that's why they selected to say Ashrei, because Ashrei is like the king of the Pesukei de Zimra, and the Selichos are Keneged Shemona Esrei, and maybe the reason he says why we say a minimum 3 Selichos a day is Keneged 3 Tfilas Hayom. Then we say Kaddish, then we say Tachanun, Kaddish, and Teskabel, and before every Tfilah we say Kaddish. And maybe for this reason they chose Ashrei like any Tfilah. Therefore, it would seem that it would come out, let's say I have to stay home, or I got a Shiloh this morning. Someone called me, they have to go to London Matzai Shabbos. Okay, when they're leaving? 10 o'clock. When they're arriving? 10 a.m. So, how are they going to say Selichos? So they'll have to say B'yechidos. Right? The thing is, you can't say Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, right? And you can't say the Aramaic parts. Okay, so you'll have to skip it. What are you going to do? Should you say Ashrei? Yeah, you should say Ashrei. But I'm not saying Kaddish. No, Ashrei is like the Pesukei de Zimra of Selichos. Kamay b'chol tefillah. The same way if somebody would daven Shachris b'yechidos, they would have to say Ashrei, or Mincha b'yechidos, they would say Ashrei. Likewise, if you say Selichos b'yechidos, say Ashrei. Look in the Sefer Kuntris.
The other tefillah after Ashrei, the Hanashama Lot, that ends.
Yeah, that also.
Too, right?
Yeah, sure, right. So in the Sefer Kuntris Shiurei Halacha, which is somewhat of a pamphlet of the Psakim of Reb Shmuel Felder, one of the Poskim in Lakewood today, he brings down someone who's delayed slightly for Selichos. Yesh la'ayin, we could look into, should he first say Ashrei, but if he's going to say Ashrei, he's going to miss a Slicha, or should he start saying Slichos? So he says, L'chayra, it's Pasha, you should say Slichos, because Ashrei is just maybe a way to say Kaddish. But he says, upon further analysis, you should say Ashrei. The Iker Takanas HaSlichos is to say Ashrei, and then Psukim, then Yud Gimel Midos, because Ashrei is like the Pesukei de Zimra of Selichos, and Rabbi Cheskel Roth also concurred with this, that if somebody comes late, they should say Ashrei. And for many years I've been saying this over, until I saw in the Sefer Kovetz Halachos, that, what?
I mean, I always thought it was like Mincha, like when you daven Mincha, to in order not to miss the Tzibur, you would start, you skip Ashrei, you go straight to
right.
Esrei.
On the other hand, Shachris, you can skip Ashrei.
Right.
Right, so I guess what it boils down to is when the Levush says it's like a tefillah, which tefillah is it like? Is it like Shachris, or is it like Mincha? If it's like Shachris, you can't skip the Ashrei. Right. If it's like Mincha, then you would skip the Ashrei. So the Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky feels that the Likutei Maharich did not read the Levush carefully enough. Nowhere does the Levush say that Ashrei is the Pesukei de Zimra of Selichos, In fact, the Levush says clearly that the Psukei de Zimra of Selichos are L'cha Hashem Hatzdaka v'lanu B'shas Hapanim Ma'amnoim Ma'adam Ma'asadak Nachas Odorim Ma'akar, and all those Psukim Shoymei Atfila Decha Basu Yavayu Haneshama Lach V'Haguf Shalach Chusa Alamach. Yeah, those are the Psukei de Zimra, right? Yavayu Kabaso Shtacha V'Yisafanecha. That's the Psukei de Zimra. Ashrei, on the other hand, the Levush doesn't say it's Psukei de Zimra. The Levush says Ashrei is a Hechitimsa to say a Kaddish. So that means the Levush is clearly saying that Ashrei is not the Psukei de Zimra of Selichos. The Psukei de Zimra of Selichos are all the Psukim of Shemei Tefillah. Ashrei would be like the Psukim before the Kaddish of Psukei de Zimra. In other words, if you would compare it to a Shachris, Ashrei would be like the Karbanos. If anything, in other words, well, here, let me just show you what he says.
The words of Ashrei fit right into Psukei de Zimra.
True.
Ashrei Yoshvei Veisecha, right?
Yes.
How could you take that and say, you might even say that they're more like a Psukei de Zimra kind of Psukim than Neshamalach. Neshamalach is already a Bakasha. Ashrei is declarative statement.
I mean, but if this is all based on Levush, he says, Ki ha-psukim shekoidem ha-selichos hem keneged psukei de Zimra. And the Levush doesn't say that it's the Ashrei that's keneged psukei de Zimra. In fact, the Levush says Ashrei is just a hechitimsa to say Kedusha. Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky says, Mishanichnas lebeis hakneses u'matza shatzibur kvar haschilu seder selichos ein tzarach lahaschel ba'ashrei. So what should you say? Ela yaschel miyad l'cha Hashem hatzdaka. And then he says, and if the tzibur is already in middle of a slicha, then skip right to the slicha. But how could you skip Psukei de Zimra? Guess the answer is that only in Shachris do we say the Psukei de Zimra is ma'akev. But in Selichos, whatever was niskan keneged Psukei de Zimra, which are the Psukim, is not ma'akev. In fact, he says, one second. He says that in the Lashon Levush is the purpose of Ashrei is to be able to say Kaddish. And so Shmuel Kamenetsky says, since the purpose of Ashrei is to say Kaddish, so Yachid who's saying Selichos, Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky says that if you're davening Selichos b'Yechidus, you don't have to say Ashrei, which I wouldn't think. I mean, by Mincha, even if you're davening b'Yechidus, you still say Ashrei. It's not only to say, yes, it's in order to say Kaddish, but once it was enacted, then you say it regardless of whether you're saying Kaddish or not. Now, but he points out that the Likutei Marich, who says that the purpose of Ashrei was to be able to say Kaddish, that's not what the Levush was in order to have a Psukei de Zimra. That's not what the Levush says. The Levush says the Psukei de Zimra is L'cha Hashem Hatzdaka. Okay, and that being the case, Shmuel Kamenetsky disagrees. I would say a nice way to look at it is where Baruch pointed out. In other words, yes, maybe Ashrei is keneged the Ashrei of Tefillah, but which Tefillah? In other words, would you say Selichos is more like a Shachris or more like a Mincha? It's pretty comparable, to a Mincha, because I was bothered by a question. If it's taka parallel to the Tefillah, so where's Shema? Where's the Shema of Selichos?
Where do you have Yud Gimel Midas?
No, Yud Gimel Midas is Keneged Shemana Esrei.
Also in Shachris?
Okay, but
and Ashrei you have in Shachris?
Yeah, but all you have in Selichos is Ashrei. You don't have a Baruch Shamra, you don't have Yishtabach, you don't have a Berchus Kriyishma, you don't have a Kriyishma. So when we say it's Keneged the Tefillah, which Tefillah is it Keneged? You would think it's more parallel to Mincha, and if that's the case, we could understand why Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky would say if somebody comes late, you don't say Ashrei. I think that's more mustaber, that if you come late, you don't have to say Ashrei.
So, but Ashrei has a lot of significance, right?
Yeah.
Shachris, if you have to say Ashrei before you say others, we have it as part of Mincha, and even on Yom Kippur, we push off Ashrei to Ne'ilah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me that raises significance that just before we have our final say to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu about Kasha, we add in Ashrei.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, I mean, why are we saying that Lavush is like saying it when you read the Keneged that it doesn't include Ashrei? It doesn't make sense. We were going to start off with Bakashas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
If anything, in a way that that demonstrates that the only reason we say Ashrei is to get in a Kaddish. Because by Mincha, you don't need a Kaddish, sort of following Musaf. Ne'ilah is a new Tfilas Hayom. Okay, Adkan. That's the first point. Yeah.
As far as them who say Hashem Hashem Kel Racham every morning,
yeah.
When they say Taknun, if they say the Shlosh Esrei Midos, and they finish one Esrei, why are they pushing off this Kabel? Why don't they say, instead of saying Chatzi Kaddish, they should say Kaddish Shalem before...
No, you only say Kaddish Shalem on a Shemana Esrei.
We said Shemana Esrei. Now we said the Shlosh Esrei Midos. Why are we waiting till after Volatzion to say Kaddish Shalem?
Because the tefillah is not over until, in other words, the tefillah is Nisacher. In other words, there's actually halacha, you can't leave the shul before Volatzion. Because the tefillah is Nimshach. The tefillah is Nimshach. Okay. I'm going to talk about another minhag, and hopefully from this minhag we'll derive a yisoid about what we're trying to accomplish with the Selichos. That is, there's a famous Ramah. The Ramah brings down in Sim Tav Kuf Pei Aleph, Sif Aleph, Yesh Mekoymos Noyagin, Sheha Mispalel Selichos Mispalel Kol Hayom. That there are some places where the minhag is that the one who davens Selichos for the Amid, he davens all the tefillas of the day. So in Yeshiva Chavetz Chaim, they're knowing that way. Whoever's a chazan for the Baal Selichos is davens all the tefillas hayom. Says the Magen Avram, what about Marav? Afilu Arvis, even Marav. What's the reason? Shehamaschel b'mitzvah oimrim lo yigamar.
Before you sleep after.
Which one? Good question. It doesn't say. He doesn't say. But the reason he gives is, why would he daven Marav for the Amud? Shehamaschel b'mitzvah oimrim lo yigamar. Because once someone begins a mitzvah, we tell him to finish. So since he began the mitzvah of Selichos, we say once you're at it, daven the rest of the tefillas of the day.
He must be at the end.
Therefore, says the Magen Avram, Venirali, Demitam zehu koidem la'avel, u'lamayel, u'liyartzait. Therefore, it's such a chiyuv to daven for the Amud. He has precedence over anybody. An avel, a yartzeit, v'yesh ksas raya lazeh, mimashe kasav sim kafaydad anshan dafil deika da'adif minehu koidem. So that's the svara. The svara is, the Magen Avram says the svara is, hamaschil b'mitzvah oimrim lo gamar. One who starts a mitzvah, we tell him to finish up. Which this is dvarim neflam ad ma'oid. It's half love a fella. What do you mean that the one who started the mitzvah should finish it? I have a question. Is there any halacha that whoever davens shachris for the amud has to daven mincha? There's no such halacha. Is there any halacha? Yeah, that somebody who davens, you could break up the beginning and somebody says Asher Volatzion. So if Shachris and Mincha are not connected, Mincha and Marav are not connected, why in the world is Selichos considered Maschil b'mitzvah Amrlai Gemar? Jeffrey wanted to know which Marav are we talking about? Are we talking about the Marav before the Selichos? When the Magen Avram says that he davens even Marav, does it the Marav before the Selichos? If it's before the Selichos, he didn't even start yet. So, and Elamai, the Marav later, it's a different day. What's up with that?
But it's a better question. What does Slichos have to do with Tefillah? Slichos is not Tefillah. Slichos and Torah are two different things, no? It's only
You missed the beginning.
You missed the beginning.
Yeah.
We talked about people come late to Selichos.
Okay. So,
3 Gimel Midos in the Slichos.
what?
How many times do you say Gimel Midos in the Slichos?
Minimum 3.
There you go. For each davening. Maybe that was.
So it's connected the 3. Well, yeah. We also, we said that, yeah. Yeah. So therefore what? What's connected each one?
Maybe.
Okay, so what's that going to do for us?
So you're saying for each, since you're saying the Gimel Midos 3 times, so for each tefillah, so you're saying, so you continue, you do it for the 3.
So you want to say Shachris is not connected to Mincha. Mincha is not connected to Marav. But Slichos is connected to all of them. Okay, good. Let's develop that. Let's continue on this. In the Shas Teshuvos Binyan Shloimei, he brings down the Ramah that there are places that were noyeg, that the one who davens Selichos davens the whole day. The source of it is the Kobay. The Magen Avram brings from the Magalei Tzedek that even Mariv he davens. Now, what is he talking about? V'nei hadivrei ha-Magen Avram eila mashma d'ratzoloymar afilu arve shala achra. The Magen Avram implies even the Mariv after, and likewise the Pri Megadim says, and the Machzas HaShekel. So it's referring to the Mariv after. However, the Elya Rabbah and the Darkei Moshe say beferish it's going on the Mariv before. They're going on the Mariv before. How could the Svara be kivin shemaschal b'mitzvah? You didn't start the mitzvah. Also, the Kobay himself, who's the source of this din, says emesh arvis, the night before, and in the morning. So the Magen Avram, who says in the name of the Magalei Tzedek that the reason is because hamaschal that's arm gemar. By the way, the Gra also brings down the svara that there's a Yerushalmi that says maschal mitzvah arm gemar. Says the Binyan Shloimei v'hadavar tumuali hafla v'fela. This is a great, amazing wonder to me. What does this concept have to do with one who begins a mitzvah? If you're involved and engaged in one mitzvah, you got to finish it. Here, the mitzvah you began, you finished. The concept of maschal mitzvah gemar is if you're middle of a mitzvah, you got to finish it off. But here, the mitzvah you did, you finished. What shachas the selichos have to do with tefillah? Right? That's what you're asking. Imagine you got a real guy who gurgled for shachris, and they couldn't wait to pull the guy down. And all of a sudden he said, I'm back and better than ever. Adarabba. Yeah.
Rabbi, would this also apply to the davening for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? If the fellow said the Selichos the night before, does he have to now be the...
you mean Yom Kippur night? If it's referring to the Mariv after, you mean? The guy who davened Erev Rosh Hashanah?
Yeah.
No. Va'adarabba.
We had a problem with the Chazanim done.
Va'adarabba. Miloshan HaMishnah Muchach. The Musaf HaMisal Acher. The Mishnah's Mashma. Musaf someone else would daven. Kamay Ditan B'Rosh Hashanah. Hasheni Maskia. But you blow by the Musaf. V'chein Tanan de B'tainis Acher Maskir. Because, right, there's a Baal Musaf. Va'adarabba me'ashas in Rosh Hashanah's word, Adar Ikar HaMitzvah Zal Acher. In the Gemara, it's mashma, you should not have the same Baal Shachris and the same Baal Mincha. Why? B'roivam hajas melech. You want to get as many people involved. But also, b'kohanim, at the time of the Avodah, they would break it up, they would give the job, delegate to as many kohanim. Each little aspect of the Avodah, they would give to a different kohen. Why? B'roivam hajas melech. Why don't we say, once you start the Avodah, do the whole thing? No. We want to be mezakeh more people in the mitzvah. So if you want to be mezakeh more people in the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, and we want to get a separate Baal Shachris and a separate Baal Musaf, why won't we get a separate Baal Selichos and a separate Baal Shachris? V'chein amrinan lahedya and Yuma chavav amabez, that the fourth lottery, who brings the Evarim from the Keves to the Mizbeach? And the Gemara says this is not like Elazar ben Yaakov, because we learned in Mishnah, Elazar ben Yaakov says, the one who brings up the Evarim to the ramp, he's the one who brings them up to the Mizbeach. And the Gemara says, what do we argue about? The Gemara says, the Rabbanan, it's always better to break up the mitzvah, delegate, mina kisei, ala kisei, tachasa kisei. We're mechabed, Rabbi, this to stand on his head under the kisei, right? As many people as you could get in there, we try to do that. Why? Because B'roi v'am hajas melech. B'roi v'am hajas melech. The Tanan Rabbos ben Yaakov, if I mean the Rabbanan side, Rabbos ben Yaakov, the Makam Shechina, the Lavarcha, we pass like the Rabbanan. That means we paskin, you get as many people involved. So if it's a mitzvah to get as many kohanim involved, it's a mitzvah to get different shlichei tzibur. Amad afilu b'chad mitzvah, even within one mitzvah, there's an inyan to be mezakeh the rabbim, and it's a bigger covered shamayim when you get more people involved. Sheinasi de rabbim, and we don't say maschal mitzvah loy gemar. V'hilkoch tefillah nami. Tefillah is b'makam karbonos. Just like by karbonos, we break it up as much as possible. Adarabba, mitzvah sheyichalik l'kama anoshim. That's covered shamayim. Therefore, says the Binyan Shlomo, v'hilkoch afsha b'mitzvah yechidus she'ena me'inyan avodah mirin d'mishas l'tzarch ligmar. Even though by a typical mitzvah, we say that if it's not avodah, you finish it off. Adarabba, you're not to give it to someone else, like we find in Soita. But by a mitzvah that's done l'rabim, opposite, you need to divide it, and you can't. The maschil cannot say, "I want to finish it up." So says the Binyan Shlomo, it is prohibited to have the same guy who davened Selichos daven the rest. But the Ramah says the minhag was he davened everything. So basically, I don't have it on the sheet, but let me tell you what the Binyan Shlomo says. He says this svara of Maschil Mitzvah Emrim La Gemara is wrong. That's not what the Ramah said. The Ramah didn't give any svara. I'll tell you what the svara is. You know what it says in Masechta Megillah? It says that the guy who lanes the Haftarah, what's he going to do? He's going to daven Musaf, and he's going to duchen, and he's going to do everything. Like we give him 10 jobs. Why? Because it's embarrassing. Consolation prize. He Nebuch had to lane the mafter, which is mafter is eino oila min aminyan. It's not a real aliyah. Even a katan could get mafter. So we don't want him to be ashamed that he got galila. Right? He's like the guy who at the bris he gets to say the harachaman at the end. Right? You know when they don't even have a minyan over there. They didn't even bench. They just had mezoinos, but they give the guy a harachaman. So we want to make him feel good. So since Selichos, says the Binyan Shlomo, is not really that chashuv, so to make the guy feel good, we'll let him down for the Ummah the rest of the day.
If there's a chiyuv, wow. Suppose somebody has yahrzeit for...
He'll push him off. You know why? Because his feelings are more important.
Really?
It's insulting that Nebuch, the guy...
Shlomo says that would take precedence?
No, the Ramah says that.
The precedence over a chiyuv?
A yahrzeit, boy b'yom, yeah. The Ramah paskins that way.
Wow.
Now we're not knowing that way. But the Svar, it says the Binyan Shlomo, the Magen Avraham was the one who said the Svara of Maschil b'mitzvah Oimrim Le'Gemar. That's not the real Svara. That Svara doesn't make sense, the Binyan Shlomo says. The Baal Shachris would never daven Mincha, or the other question is, it's a separate inyan. He already finished the Tefillah of the day. By the way, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef asks on this Binyan Shlomo, wait a second, it's embarrassing to daven Selichos? The Shulchan Aruch talks about the criteria of what type of chazan is needed for Selichos Yom Naram, and what type of eligibility he has to have. That means it was a davar shel chashivos to daven Selichos for the Amad. So the question then is, if that is not the Svara, but rather the Svara is as the Magen Avraham and the Gra says, the Svara of Maschil b'mitzvah Oimrim Le'Gemar, but number one, he wasn't Maschil Shachris, he davened Selichos. And since all he did was he davened Selichos, he finished the Selichos. Why would he then daven the rest of the Tefillah of the day? The Baal Shachris doesn't daven Mincha, why does the Baal Selichos? So, what Gary was suggesting, and this is what Rabbi Yasher Ber Soloveitchik says, and I actually found this in a Rishon. I even got calls, well, you found this in a Rishon, where? Where in which Rishon? I'm going to share with you. In the Sefer Harei Kedem of Rav Shurkin, who was a Rebbe in Taras Moshe in Eretz Yisrael, he was a Talmud of Rabbi Yasher Ber Soloveitchik. He brings down that Rabbi Yasher Ber explained the Magen Avraham in the following way. He quotes the Rama that the Baal Selichos davens the rest of the Tefillah of the day. The reason is Maschil b'mitzvah Oimrim Le'Gemar, and the Achroinim ask, how does this apply to Maschil b'mitzvah? This is only if in the mitzvah you are performing, you have to finish it up, but this is a separate mitzvah. Well, look at the next paragraph. V'hanira mavur mizeh, says Rabbi Yasher Ber, we learn from here that obviously we have to have redefine and learn what is the objective of Selichos. Why are we saying Selichos? The Siddur not big enough? We have to daven more? You ask most people, is the tefillah long enough? Take a vote. Is the tefillah long enough?
Try to do it from the beginning of...
most people would say that more pages is not what we need. But what are we trying to accomplish with the Selichos? The answer is, it is actually a hakdama to all the tefillos of the day. It's a way of saying Hashem, it's a way of making Hashem nisratzeh. Please accept my shachris today. Please accept my mincha today. Please don't. Please accept. No, I meant. Don't give us them any good ideas. A few days is good. Yeah, Mariv is. Please accept my Mariv today. Meaning like this. When we daven 3 tefillas a day, each tefillah stands on its own. Shachar stands on its own. Mincha stands on its own. Mariv stands on its own. However, Selichos doesn't stand on its own. The purpose of Selichos is, Rebbeinu Shalom, this is an Eis Ratzain. It's a time of the year where we have to purify ourselves, and part of that purification is through extra tefillah. Please Hashem, accept my shachris today. So, like Gary mentioned, we suggested in the beginning of the Shiur that with the minimum of 3 mentions of Gimel Mitzvah Rachamim as connected to 3 tefillos of the day. So really, it's like a haschala of shachris, a haschala of mincha, a haschala of mariv. If you daven shachris, you don't have to daven mincha, because shachris and mincha have nothing to do with each other. But slichos is like the intro of all the 3 tefillos of the day. Look at the second paragraph. Vanir mavur mizeh dechal ikar in yanam shel slichos hu kahagdama v'toisefes l'chol tefillas hayayim. It's like an intro and an add-on to all the tefillos of the day. V'toisefes hatefila v'hatachnunim shel slichos. The additions of slichos heim lekabalas kol tefillas hayayim. It's a toisefes of tefillah for each tefillah. Meaning, then it would come out, says Rabbi Yashiva, you have some people, they make their guest appearances a few times a year. Selichos, Rosh Hashanah day, first day, and Yizkar on Yom Kippur, and Nila. If you're not going to be davening Shachris, Mincha, Mariv, there is absolutely no point in saying Selichos. The whole point in saying Selichos is, Hashem, answer my shachris today. But if you ain't going to daven shachris, then there's no point in saying the slichos. So that's a big chiddush. And then he doesn't daven. He wasn't yotzei slichos either. We understand the Ramah. Since the purpose of slichos is it combines with the other tefillos of the day, so we could apply the rule of hamaschal b'mitzvah imrum loy gamar, as opposed to shachris and shar tefillos hayom. Each tefillah is a chiyuv b'fnei atzma, and therefore it's not shaykh to say that one who daven shachris should daven the other tefillos. They're separate tefillos. He says, Rabbi Yashiva, that this yisaid we could learn from Ne'ilah. The Rambam writes in Perek Aleph of Hilchos Tefillah that Chazar Masakin after Mincha Samach L'Shkia on a Tainis that we daven Nila Kedei Lahoisif Tchina Ubakasha Mibnei Atainis. Meaning the Cheftza of Ne'ilah is Riboy Tefillah Tzlusa Yisarta. Like the Yishalmi says that where do we learn Ne'ilah from? Gaham Ki Sarbu Tefillah Eineni Shaimeya. From here we learn Mikan Shekal HaMarbe B'Tefillah Nene. So from here we see someone who didn't daven the tefillas of Yom Kippur. Now that Rabbi Yashiva says a chiddush halacha. Let's say you have a chayla. He wasn't able to daven. He couldn't come to shul, but he figured he'll crawl out of bed for ne'ilah. Now to daven. Can't daven. Why? It says, "Ol eis erev hu balas al ne'ilah einoi rashoy lehispalel." You may not daven ne'ilah. Not that it's not going to do anything. It's aser. Why? Because ne'ilah, the cheftz of ne'ilah is riboy tefillah. It's not a riboy tefillah if you didn't daven the other tefillah sayim. So he's not oinus on ne'ilah as well. Taka, he's an oinus on ne'ilah. He can't daven ne'ilah though.
It's not a punishment. You just can't do it.
He can't do it. Now, I don't know that we pass in this way. I'm just saying this is how Rabbi Yashiva, because it's mavur in the Rambam and the Yushalmi. The Yushalmi learns that ne'ilah is riboy tefillah. So if you didn't daven the main tefillah today, you would not be allowed to do it. Unless you argue and you say that it's still a riboy tefillah because Klal Yisrael daven the other tefillos. So I didn't daven, okay, but I'm being marbet to the tefillos Yisrael. Maybe you could argue that. Vinei hagoin Rav Moshe Zatzal. What?
Yes. Okay, so what's going to happen in a case like that with the chola, even if he thinks in his head during the day, Kadosh Baruch Hu, please forgive me, I'm sorry, that's his own tefillah. Then the Elah would be a ribui tefillah.
Okay, you might have to actually articulate something.
Yeah.
You're saying if he said but now the shaila is it a ribui tefillah only if you daven all the tefillah hayom, or even one tefillah of the day? So he brings there, Ramosha was masupuk. Is it enough to have daven one tefillah, or do you need dafka all the tefillah hayom? But Rabbi Yasher on the other hand, for him, he held pashut. Unless you daven all the tefillos hayom, you are not permitted to daven ilah. So what Rabbi Yasher we have here says Ba'arichos, the Siyat Shmai I found in the Leket Yosher. The Leket Yosher is the minhagim of the Trumas Hadeshen, Rabbi Yisrael Isserlin. Look what I found. He says, Va'amar b'soif hadrasha, the Trumas Hadeshen said at the end of his drasha, Ki choik li Yisrael hu mishpat le'elekei Yaakov. Tema, lama amar Yaakov, Yosem Abraham v'Yitzchak. Why do we say mishpat le'elekei Yaakov? He says Yaakov is mishpat because Abraham was oiked and Yitzchak was ne'akad. And the Akedah was rachamim. So the only mishpat is Yaakov. Okay, then he says as follows. Miksas b'nei Adam oimdim l'slicha v'achar kach holchem l'tzarcheim. Some people, they wake up, they say Selichos, and then they go to their jobs. Or Yeshenim, or they go back to sleep, and they don't come to shul for Baruch Hu and Kedusha. V'heim tayim. Ki ha-tefillah b'chol yom ma'a b'makom hatamid. The tefillah of every day is in place of the carbon. V'hu ikar yoser me'aslichos. That's more important than Selichos. Another interesting thing. If you could do one or the other, davening or Selichos, tefillah. Now there are two reasons. Tefillah A is more important, and two, to daven a slicha without the tefillah, it's meaningless, right? And he says, Ki ha-slichos einam ba'im rak kedei sheyehei ha-tefillah l'ratzayin. The whole purpose of the slichos is so that the tefillah should be accepted. He says, Mashal is alami shayav oiloi oireach chashav. Let's say, so a chashav, a guest comes into your shiur, let's say, right? Nasan loy tavshil koidem. First, you give him a baked apple. See, right? First you give him a baked apple, and then you give him chicken and potato kachal. So that's what slichos are. It's an appetizer. Okay? So that basically sums up. So I think it's an important idea to bear in mind that the davening of slichos is, it's a way to appease Hashem that your tefillah should be neskabel, and therefore the ikar is really to put in more focus on the tefillah itself, that we should improve our davening during this time, and understand that the purpose of the slichos is to have our tefillahs be accepted. One last idea from the Leket Yosher, a Talmud of Rabbi Yisrael Isserlin. He says a beautiful idea. Why do we begin Selichos Matzoi Shabbos? Why Matzoi Shabbos? So all the well-known ideas are, well, you need to have a minimum of 4 days. Why do you need to have a minimum of 4 days? Because, like a carbon, it says by Rosh Hashanah, Ba'asisem.
The June is blocking the driveway.
You have a minimum of 4 days like a carbon. It says Va'asisem. Doesn't say V'kraftem. We have a minimum of 4 days, and therefore they wanted to keep it uniform, so we always start the first day of the week. Well, the Leket Yosher says another reason. When Rosh Hashanah comes out on Thursday, the minhag is to stand up for Selichos on Sunday. Why? You need at least 3 days for Hashanah. Fine. Then he says like this. V'yesh loymar, second line, la'olam oimdim b'yom rishon. We always start on Sunday. Why? Mishum shu samach l'Shabbos. Because it's near Shabbos. V'na'ah kol adam lilmoid b'Shabbos. The minhag of every person was to learn on Shabbos. V'chein hu b'yomav. Why? Mishum de'in la'adam asakim. You don't have business to take care of. And you have time. Like Chazal say when Klal Yisrael came to Eretz Yisrael, so the Torah got very upset. They used to learn me in the Midbar, but now they have their vineyards and they have their orchards. Ve'enam loimdim Torah, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's like two sisters. One of them was married and the other one had no spouse. So too Hashem says, look. Sunday has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Shabbos has nobody. Shabbos will take the Torah. So basically, Shabbos is designed and dedicated for Limud Torah. And since people learn a lot on Shabbos, and when you learn a lot, you're in a good mood. Why? Because Pikudei Hashem Yisharim Mesamchei Lev. And they're also in a good mood because of Oneg Shabbos. And when we know when a person is in a happy mood, the Shechina is Shaira. Therefore, the proper time to bring down the Shechina is Matzai Shabbos, when a person is besimcha over the fact that they learned on Shabbos. So even though here we learn on Friday, and you're in a very good mood on Friday from the Shiur, but we can't change the Selichos for all of Klal Yisrael just because the people that come to this Shiur are in a good mood. So you're going to have to wait until Shabbos, when the rest of Klal Yisrael spends the entire day learning. People have these meals Shabbos afternoon for hours, endlessly talking about absolute nonsense. Not only do they not learn, they don't even sleep. It's one thing, you don't want to learn, but you're sitting around talking, you might as well sleep. Shabbos, you eat your meal, you get a little rest, and then the purpose of the day is Kedei Lilmoid. So that's another thing. Here you have people, they sleep the whole day so they could stay up Matzah Shabbos. The whole reason it's Matzah Shabbos is because...
But then why is it 1 o'clock in the morning? Who's in a good mood at 1 o'clock in the morning? If the whole idea is because you're in a good mood, do it right after Shabbos, and then it's Mosamach Shabbos.
After a certain amount of time, at midnight, the mind starts, gets on a high and is a very happy mood. So we should be zoicha to take advantage of the Eis Ratzain, and all of our tefillah should be neskabel Barach Muratzin. Okay, pick it up here in 2 minutes.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.